One thing that's different about Austin Energy than some of the other panelists here that differentiates us, is not to make us better or anything, because we're not, it's that we're a city department. And that's very unique in the industry, because being a city department as a public utility, we actually write the building codes. We actually go directly to City Council to get our whole entire program. As a matter of fact, if you call the mayor's office and ask about the city's transportation electrification program, he's going to refer you to us. So that's very different. That streamlines some things for us, makes some things easier, and of course we're a city department, which also makes some things very bureaucratic. So we live with that also. Thought it was interesting, the electric bicycles, we've had incentives, rebates for some time now, several years, for electric bicycles, electric scooters, cars, electric vehicles. So we're changing our thinking now. Of course, we're going to keep the electric bicycles and scooter rebates, but for the vehicles themselves, we're transitioning to the charging infrastructure and the EVSEs. And so that's really where our focus is now. Some of the things we've been working on is, like I say, we've been working on this a long time. In 2006, we formed Plug-in Partners it's a national campaign to convince auto manufacturers that a market exists for plug-in partners, for electric vehicles. And so we went across the country after rolling this out in Washington, D.C., and spent a lot of money and got a lot of people on board and convinced the auto manufacturers it would work. So we were grateful for all the people who participated in that. That program ran for about 3 years and was highly, highly successful. As a matter of fact, when we shut it down, we were just surprised at how many, pretty much all the auto manufacturers were announcing at that point that they were going to build electric vehicles. And so here we are. A matter of weeks, they'll be here. In 2008, we did a smart charging pilot project. What does it mean for a utility to manage the charging of the cars? And I don't use the word control because we want to leave the control with the vehicle owner. But what kind of programs could we put in place that would allow us to manage the charging so that you could go home at night, plug in whatever time you get home, 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and when you needed your car, it was going to be ready, and you didn't have to worry about it. And we had a program in place that you liked and would sign up for. And there's one thing about Austin Energy we're very good at is designing programs that our customers really like. And so we're working very, very hard on that. Interesting with that smart charging pilot project, what we did, we took a couple of Toyota Priuses, converted them to plug-in hybrids, and then put a smart charging management system in them, which is a web-based cellular gateway file server system. And you could actually watch the cars drive around. Mm-hmm. It has GPS on there. And we've got incredible amounts of data from the cars and from our charging efforts. The Idaho National Lab crunches the data and we get monthly reports. But we did a number of charging scenarios, and one of my favorite was we think about West Texas wind blows strongest at the middle of the night. So I actually lined up charging with the peak wind in the middle of the night so that this system would actually interrogate the battery of the car, determine the state of charge, calculate what time the charger should come on to center it with the wind. And it would do it night after night after night automatically. And so in many other scenarios we tested. Anyone that wants a copy of the report that we generated, just let me know. Send me an email. This, about a year ago, this was a year ago, in October of last year, we chartered our plug-in electric vehicle project. That was a combination of our Get Ready project and looking at the first adopters, learning from that. So it's a 3-year project. It runs to October 1st of 2012. And we're through the first year of it. And we have 5 committees on this. One of them is business development. We're looking at all kinds of business models. On one end, we have owning all the charging infrastructure, utility owned. On the other end, we're looking at owning none of it. And right now, we actually have money in the budget for owning all the residential charging infrastructure between now and 2015. I was surprised that we got that through, as cleanly as we did, but it's there, it's earmarked. And what I sold everyone on was the fact that we are not asking for a decision at this point. We're putting the money in the budget. In the first couple of years, we're not going to see a lot of cars. We have the money already for that in our program. 2013, 14, it starts turning into some real money. And so by then, through our initiative, we expect to understand what ownership of these things mean and what is the real business model. So right now, we plan on owning them, and we're working on that. The infrastructure and communication team is really about the power delivery and all the infrastructure there, but it's also about the communication, which for generation 1 of these cars, the standards aren't developed, so the communication is not going to come directly out of the car through that J1772 plug. So we're looking at smart EVSEs, talking to a number of manufacturers, how we're going to apply that and own those, and so we're working in that direction. Also, our outreach and marketing program. Education is a major piece. This forum here is great, and I applaud ACOG and CPS Energy for putting this on. These things like this are very valuable. Take all this information and share it with everyone that you know. This is very important that we get all this information out. We look at public charging as a category all of its own. We've identified 10 charging categories, but public charging we look at as a regional effort, which is what I'm hearing here also. And the region now includes the state of Texas. And so we very much support that and been very engaged with all these, well, everyone at the table here in moving this forward. In July this year, we actually had our Central Texas PEV Summit. This was a by invitation Central Texas Summit from Georgetown down to San Antonio. We invited utilities, cities, transportation authorities, just so everyone could get in this room together and hear what's going on. If they haven't heard about this or they've heard about it, wasn't sure about it, what does this mean? And also, this regional effort, we all have boundaries. And think about when you start looking at placement of charging stations, if I put one on my side of the street and all of a sudden look over there and same day maybe you have another contractor putting one on your side of the street, well, what advantage is there for that? So if we work on a matrix together, we can limit the costs and get all the charging infrastructure out there that we need. We have several grants we're working on with, and since we haven't signed the contracts, we don't talk about them specifically, but it's with the car manufacturers, charging infrastructure, pretty much the two major pieces. Some of the other activities we have that goes beyond just the vehicles that we'd all drive to work. A couple of years ago, we sponsored a PHEV bus. So it's been running for a couple of years. The Austin Independent School District has been using that. As a utility, we see buses as being the vehicle-to-grid piece pathway. We don't see just individual plug-in vehicles as being the pathway for vehicle-to-grid because you have to aggregate those. And in Texas today, that means you have to have a 1 megawatt load. That's a lot of cars that you have to aggregate, schedule, and they have to be there. So we think if we have buses, then it's pretty easy to start adding some cars. You think about those bus barns, especially that sit there in the summertime with 100 or 200 buses in them. So you aggregate a few of those bus barns together, well, you have a real load. Also, this trouble truck we have is actually working on street lights in Austin. We've had it for about a year now. Also, we're working on the airport electrification, not only on the ground side, but the air side. Of course, the air side belongs pretty much to the airlines, and we work through them. But on the ground side, they're the people movers, all the maintenance equipment, and all the operations that move from building to building. And of course, we have the Volt and also the Leaf coming, as was brought out earlier. We're also a significant part of the Pecan Street project. If you don't know what that is, that looks at the utility of the future. And where that started was Austin Energy was looking at if we started getting a lot of renewables and people start self-generating. What happens when all of a sudden the meter is reading zero? What is the business model for the utility with 0 kilowatt hours? So this led to the Pecan Street project, which now has become a not-for-profit 501c3. Austin Energy is on the board. We don't make the decisions, but we're a significant consultant, and I'm on 2 of their teams. And so that has a significant transportation piece in it. We threw this slide in at lunch. This is because of the conversation earlier about what do you mean about it looks like a refrigerator and then it doubles a house load. I'm going to try to explain that with this slide. If you look at the black line, that's the, for a 24-hour day, that's what the summer load profile looks like. Now, the red cap that's on top of that is the charging load of the vehicle. So if you go home on peak and plug your car in, you see the red cap. So effectively, that doubles the load on the house at that point for the time you're charging, okay? Now, you see when it's charged, there probably about 8 o'clock or so, then it turns off. And then for the rest of the day, all the way until the next peak, you're not charging any. So the total kilowatt hour usage in a year is probably, as you heard earlier, about 2,000 kilowatt hours a year. But on peak, you know, it's that much electricity for that amount of time. It just doesn't last a long time. Hopefully that clarifies that and gives you a picture of what it looks like. But yes, and this is a doubling of the peak, but the Leaf in year 2 will be a 6.6 kilowatt charging rate, and that could triple the load on the house at peak. So that is a significant issue.